Good morning, good afternoon, or evening, whenever and wherever you are listening to us. Welcome to Logistics Business Conversations. I've spent a lot of time at logistics conferences this year, and there's one topic that dominates almost every keynote, exhibition stand, and panel discussion. That is artificial intelligence. Every technology supplier seems to have an AI story to tell, and every warehouse operator is asking the same question. How can AI help my business become more efficient? Well, today's guest believes we may be getting ahead of ourselves because before AI can make intelligent decisions, it first needs something rather more fundamental, namely accurate, trustworthy data about what's actually happening on the warehouse floor. So today we're going to find the answers to questions such as, is AI only as good as the data it's given? Or what is physical AI? And how do you create a warehouse that's not just automated, but genuinely informed? Joining me to answer those questions is Oana Jinga, who's Chief Commercial and Product Officer at Dexory. Buckle up and settle down for the next 40 minutes or so to hear my really interesting conversation with Oana.
Welcome to Logistics Business Conversations, the podcast exploring the ideas and insights shaping today's logistics industry. Featuring leading voices from across the sector, we examine key trends, emerging challenges, and the innovations driving the future of supply chains.
Hello, Oana, and welcome to Logistics Business Conversations.
Hello, Peter. Very lovely to see you, and thanks for having me.
Let's get straight into it. The phrase AI is dominating every logistics conversation I have, every conference I attend, every article I write, every interview I conduct. Now, every software supplier claims that they've got it. Every warehouse operator wants to know how to use it. But it seems to me that your argument is slightly different. You're saying that the real problem isn't AI at all, really. It's whether the information we're feeding into it is actually correct. Have I understood that correctly?
Yeah, indeed. And I think, to be honest, this is something that goes way back before the AI era altogether. So I think any kind of solution that you use that requires data, of course, is going to have an output based on how good that data is. And probably even now with AI, because we're processing so much of that data, it becomes harder and harder because, again, especially in the warehouse space, you need a lot of it and you need all of it to be as accurate as possible. Otherwise, the recommendations on the other end just won't fit the physical reality of what's happening day to day in a site. If anything, it could be great things to think about and consider, but not really actually put into practice immediately. So our stance is, of course, it's not about kind of adopting AI. That's a given. I think somebody was saying the other day that if anyone's still asking you, should I adopt AI, they've already lost the battle and probably kind of be out of business very soon.
The train has left the station.
Exactly. Yeah. But obviously, as you do that, there's a few kind of key steps that need to be taken into account so that it has the biggest impact on the day-to-day business.
But the logistics manager you speak to will say, well, I've got WMS. I know exactly what's in my warehouse. Would you argue that's not necessarily true?
I think hundreds of sites that use us now as obviously their main kind of data collection solution have proven that it's not true. Of course, there will be different levels of that. We have customers where we go in and after the first few scans with Dexory, we realize that their accuracy is somewhere around I wouldn't even go as low as 70% because we've seen that as well. But let's say on average, somewhere around 85%. Of course, in their minds, it's 95 plus. And of course, that means that if that accuracy is not correct, all the other data points that follow from it won't be correct. However, apart from the WMS itself, there's a lot of other data points that matter. And it's not just the pretty much the recording of the stock itself. Is actually understanding the physicality of the space, the distances, the structures of the racks, the actual shapes and sizes of every pallet or every good. There's a lot more of that physical information that is essential, which is not captured in the WMS or can't even be captured by humans because we can't really take 3D pictures of things with our brains yet and download those into a system.
So that's kind of the biggest cause of this gap then, the sort of the physical infrastructure or challenges.
Yes, I mean, I think it's all together, right? Because to really understand the day-to-day operations and reality of a warehouse, you need to know what the stock is, what's coming in, what's going out. But also you need to understand the movement of people around it. You need to understand the space in that particular warehouse, because again, these are all kind of key resources that make or break the warehouse day to day, the machinery and how that machinery is being used. So all of those elements of physicality become absolutely essential when trying to kind of use an engine that would recommend things to do inside the warehouse.
Now, before we sort of dive deeper into that topic, is perfect inventory accuracy actually achievable, or is this more about reducing uncertainty to like an all-round acceptable level?
I think it is achievable, but it's never going to be 100%.
Hmm.
The closest that we get with most customers is like 99.8, 99.9%. But the important thing is to be able to have that and maintain it every single day. It's not just, we've done one inventory 6 months ago, and after it, like we cleaned everything up and we are 99%, but obviously by now it's going to drop to 85 again. It's more like once you get to that level, is how do you maintain that with minimal effort? And then again, the inventory is pretty much kind of step zero in this whole conversation, because once you understand exactly where things are, what you can rely on, and going back to the point earlier, also the space and also the other resources that you can use properly on a daily basis, knowing how all of those work together then allows you to make a lot of different decisions. So that kind of inventory accuracy is pretty much kind of the first step and probably the most important one. But that then unlocks so many more other potentials for how you can pretty much drive more efficiency out of the whole space.
Right. Well, we're not talking about theory here, because before this conversation, we asked our LinkedIn audience a simple question. How confident are you that your warehouse physical data is accurate right now? Only 13% said they were very confident. Almost none out of 10 admitted they had gaps, or maybe, simply did not know. Does this sort of tally with what you see out there in the real world?
Yeah, there's also, like I said earlier, this perception that, things are definitely good. And I think especially, it's a very kind of controversial thing, I'm going to say, there's certain cultures that don't necessarily accept that they've done things wrong.
Can we dig into that a little bit when you say certain cultures? We're not going to stereotype here, but what do you mean?
Yeah.
Is it an attitude approach amongst certain demographics?
Yeah, I think it's this kind of perception that there is no way they would have done something wrong. Everything is working seamlessly here because we put together a process a while back, and of course everyone is following it diligently, and kind of the assumption that, like, we're definitely on top of it, and everyone's following the rules. And the most kind of exciting bit on our side is actually when we go in and then we prove them otherwise with pretty much black and white data. So there's no kind of
And
like
watch
discussion.
this drop.
Exactly. I was like, and yeah, well, no, we kind of knew about this, and oh yeah, we assumed this. I'm like, oh yeah, okay. So,
What's the confidence drain out of them?
yeah, but it's strange, right? And I think we had a customer panel a couple of months ago where quite a few of our customers were talking about what they've learned using us throughout the years. And I probably can name these guys because they're very public about it. But C.H. Robinson in the US, they've used us in multiple sites. Yeah, they're probably kind of going into the third year now. And of course, when we started, I think it was Grant from their side that said he was kind of like putting a very ugly mirror back at us, because initially just everything lit up as a Christmas tree. It's like, oh God, this is a lot worse than we thought. But that's a psychological barrier. Then you have to just kind of jump over it and say, okay, yep, this is the situation. Let's do something about it. Let's rectify it. And then it goes back to my point around, once you do that and you put the effort in the first few weeks, then you maintain that every single day ongoingly. So I think it's as any kind of solution that starts digging through reality and through data, it will unlock and it will show a lot of things that people wouldn't be aware of. So I think what's interesting to me is actually on the poll itself is that last part, which is pretty much like, I have no idea. Which is probably the worst one, right? Because we talk a lot about there's so many different systems that are tracking things, that are giving warehouse managers and different warehouse teams all kinds of insights and data. But I think that's a little bit of a reaction to that overload of information, which is you become a little bit blind and deaf to it. And then you actually realize, like, I don't even know what's going on anymore because I don't even know where to look anymore. So that's also like a very interesting point from my side. Rather than those that are in the middle, they're like, oh yeah, I think it's good, or should be good. The ones that don't even know where to start to look at it is probably the alarming part.
Alarming for them, yes, and the implications to their business. If I could just change tack a little bit here, Oana. You've talked in the past and currently about physical AI, and for listeners hearing that phrase for the first time, what does that actually mean? What is physical AI in logistics terms?
Well, physical AI is a wider term, so we can start there. It's pretty much this move from what we are all used to, let's say nowadays already with Claude, ChatGPT, and other solutions that are like large language models, which is generally speaking more like digital AI. So it's solutions that are being trained on all the data available on the World Wide Web, a lot of information in how we talk, how we speak, how we rationalize things as a human being. And obviously, like, you get a variety of different results from there, which normally have a human actor or human agent that has to put that in practice somehow. Whereas physical AI is kind of flipping that on its head by kind of considering that there would actually be another type of, like, either another robot or some other types of AI that will take that action and put it into practice. So you kind of bring that AI into the physical world. And here you talk about a lot of the things that obviously been running for a while now, like autonomous cars. You can talk about simple robots that move elements from A to B and kind of navigate around things as they kind of happen in the warehouse, or reacting to that and actually making a physical decision. Or if you go into the more complex element of humanoids and kind of whatever solution it might be that can operate in all kinds of physical scenarios. So if we go back to the warehouse, what physical AI is pretty much kind of bringing into the warehouse space is outside of the simple solutions and the robotics and automation solutions we have for many years now, pretty much conditioned by, I'm going from A to B. If this happens, I'm going to do that. If this happens, I'm going to do that. So a lot of kind of ifs, then this, into a lot more complex way of understanding that reality, and also bringing together a lot more data points to make those decisions. So rather than, like, if we've got an obstacle, well, the best route I could actually take is not just around it, but actually I could go on to the other side of the site. I could actually pick another thing while I'm there. So it's just kind of like connecting together a lot more actions than the normal kind of A to B decision. So to put it simply is, yeah, bringing that AI into the real world and having somebody perform that action onto a physical environment.
I've always thought the robot was the clever bit, but of course it's the the software, the data part behind it that's the clever bit. And it seems like it's starting to think more like a human would, or a very clever human would.
Yeah, and to be honest, a lot of people are thinking about robotics as like nuts and bolts and anything that is, to your point, very physical. But actually, for it to properly perform with some sort of a level of intelligence, because we're not yet obviously at human intelligence there, it's all in the software side of it. And again, kind of going back to where we started the conversation, the software works better if you feed it the right information and the right data, because it's going to make the right decisions. So it's again kind of that full circle from our conversation. And the more sophisticated the software itself becomes, the more data it needs, which kind of has to be fed rightly and has to be accurate.
So is it ultimately about helping supervisors make better decisions, or is it kind of removing those decisions from them altogether?
I think it's not yet to a point where you want to remove the decisions. You definitely still want to rely on the decision makers in the site itself. I don't think there's enough solutions out there that truly understand the full complexity of a warehouse space. They can get close to it. I mean, from our perspective, we launched Dexory Review Adapt a couple of months ago, and we ingest a lot of information and data from our customers, including ways of working, SOPs, SLAs that they have, and of course, like warehouse management system, ERP, and a lot of other types of data. So we can get quite close to really understanding that physical reality from the scans that we collect with the robots, from, again, the way the site should be operating. But we haven't yet kind of gotten to a point where we can say, yeah, we can replicate your best inventory manager, best health and safety manager, to really be able to take that human decision maker out of the loop. You have to build that trust and then slowly learn from how humans are using the solution to be able to start kind of taking more away from it. But it's going to take a while to get to that.
Oh, Anna, on previous editions of Logistics Business Conversations, several of our previous guests have spoken about how AI helps people to make these better decisions rather than replacing them. Where does the human experience still beat AI, in your opinion or experience?
Yeah, and I can probably talk about the very kind of interesting observations we've had, obviously kind of working with all our customers around the world, which is, I think in every single site, you have a person, let's call them Steve. And Steve has been there for a number of years, has kind of observed the operation evolve and move, and has met all the suppliers, everyone kind of delivering goods, taking goods out. So it really kind of understands and has a gut feel around how to best run the whole site. Steve is the one that kind of comes in every morning, observes the things, just has a quick kind of glance at some of the dashboards, some of the WMS entries, and kind of say, okay, we need to do X, Y, Z. We need to change the slotting strategy here. We need to kind of do something about this picking area. So there's just so much in Steve's mind that has been built up over years and years of experience, and especially knowing how that particular site operates and what's good, what's bad, who the team members are, who's the most efficient. So a lot of kind of the day-to-day operational kind of understanding of it. And I think the moment that AI wins is when AI can actually understand Steve's mind and replicate it and then share Steve's mind across multiple teams, but then also kind of across multiple sites of that particular customer. So we're not there yet in any shape or form.
Mm-hmm.
And what I was talking about earlier is like, what we're trying to do at Dexory is get as close as possible to it by really, really getting that ground truth, because that's what Steve has and nobody else has. And as you kind of start scanning, starts kind of capturing that information day after day, you can see how people react to the recommendations that are given by the platform. Then what that impact of that recommendation again goes back into the site. You kind of close that loop and start learning from it day after day. So you require quite a bit of that physical data to be able to get to the level of Steve's mind.
So currently, when Steve walks out, the clock strikes 5 on the Friday evening. When Steve walks out to get down the pub or take his dog out for a walk, currently that knowledge walks out of the building with him.
Yeah, not even thinking about Steve retiring or changing companies or other things
Oh,
like
yeah,
that,
or
where it's
getting ill,
completely
yeah.
gone, right? Yeah. So I think that's the worst part, actually.
So do you think technology will capture that intuition, or is AI still nowhere near kind of replacing that?
No, I think it will get very close to it. I think that's the whole point. Sometimes I think we get quite surprised on some of the results and like, okay, this is quite complex thinking, and somehow I kind of managed to extract exactly what I had in my head and then kind of obviously position it in a response or like a document, whatever that is. So we can see it possible in that world, because again, there is so much data that this gets trained on and so many users now that obviously react to it, and then that helps reinforce what's working or not and train the models. That we will get to that level of understanding on the physical spaces and in the warehouse space, because that's the one we're talking about, but it does require a lot of information to be captured and also a lot of users to use that information so that you can then understand the implications that it has on the actual warehouse operation. So it will get there, but as I said, it's not a straightforward overnight kind of journey as a switch.
I guess maybe we're jumping ahead of ourselves because we're still talking about here trying to overcome this bad data that many businesses seem to have inherent in their systems. So imagine I'm running a 3PL and I've got 50,000 SKUs, and my WMS says everything looks absolutely fine, Peter. But if it's wrong, say 2%, 5%, what's the hidden cost of that? I mean, maybe not necessarily give me figures, but how it would affect the business, perhaps.
Yeah, and it goes back to the whole kind of repercussions of an error, right, at the end of the day. And
So
I
kind of
mean,
snowballing.
exactly. Because again, like accuracy and the fact that people care about it. I mean, obviously warehouse operators care about them, and then there's SLAs around accuracy. It's not just a nice to have to say, okay, we've ticked the box and that's it. Like again, going back to the point around that inventory accuracy is 0.0. Once you achieve it, it means that all the other different operations and different processes in the warehouse will run as smooth as possible. So if somebody goes to pick something, you will be there waiting for them in the right quantity, in the right condition as well. So nothing broken, nothing hanging. So they can pick that and fulfill the order, get stuff out the door into the hands of a happy customer or distribution center or the production line, obviously, that it has to go to. But once that shifts and the moment you go to a location, the item is not there or in the right quantity and condition, then you have to start investigating, where else can I get this good? It could be something that you find very quickly, or it could take half an hour, it could take days, pretty much. So then automatically you're just losing that time, which then affects the productivity of a picker, the fullness of an order, getting that order out the door. So everything then kind of falls from there. So even like in today's day and age, obviously that data accuracy is just so important to ensure that the site works as efficiently as possible. So in an AI world, that's going to be even more, because those decisions are not going to be just one by one by one. There's a lot of decisions happening in parallel continuously, which again means that there's a lot more data required, and there's more kind of possibility of things going wrong if that data is not accurate.
So the implications go beyond productivity. It's ultimately customer service and profitability.
Exactly. So it goes across all the different key KPIs that the site has. I think the best example we have, like if we go back to the customer panel I was talking about, which is somebody from DHL was sharing how getting to that 99% accuracy and maintaining that for a whole year has improved their OTIF numbers by about 1% for that particular site, which, I mean, if you calculate, you're talking about millions and millions in like revenue and productivity, right? So the implication of it is massive if it's not where it should be. And sometimes people don't really have a great way of tracking that, because they just accept that, oh, yeah, we had like 20 stock investigations happening today. We had 5 orders missing, and they never go back to necessarily the cause and the actual kind of point where it started from. They will look at like, well, yeah, maybe pickers didn't move fast enough, or maybe things are too far away from each other. There's a lot of other elements that they consider before they go back to that stock quality to begin with.
And if I can quote back some numbers to you, that that figure, you said 70% inaccuracy, as a starting point. If you bring that up into the 90s, that's already a massive gain. What about if you're starting at a point of 98% and then you're bringing that to 99.8%? That would still feel like a significant improvement, wouldn't it, to a business that's running that efficiently?
Yeah, and going back to your example of like those 50,000 SKUs, right? You're talking about a couple thousand locations having a problem, which
Yeah.
it's not trivial considering like the number of like picks or moves you might have a day. Like it might be that it's impacting even like 10% of your daily moves at one point. If those goods especially are fast moving goods, because usually that's where a lot of the errors are happening because obviously of the nature of them moving more than the others, then the impact kind of down the line can be significant. When you get into that level of thousands, there's a huge impact on things. We talk a lot about logistics in the sense of distribution and moving kind of goods from A to Z into a customer. But we do have a very big base of customers that use us on pretty much warehouses that feed production lines. So if your stock is not there to get a part done or a car done, like we have a lot of automotive customers, like the guys at Stellantis, for instance, if that production line freezes even for 5 seconds, that's already a significant kind of business impact in terms of like tens of thousands of dollars, probably even more depending on the site. So again, like the need of the accuracy can vary a little bit on the type of site you're running, but at the end of the day, it all starts from like ensuring that you have clean data and everything is accurate from the beginning.
Are we at the stage of technology where, for example, if I walked into a warehouse today and unplugged every AI tool in the building, I guess most operations would probably just carry on okay. But if I somehow managed to introduce like a 2% error in the warehouse data, that would be quite an issue. How quickly would that operation start to unravel?
I think it's an interesting point around any type of automation, let's say, right? Because you bring automation or like an AI tool or something to obviously kind of remove some of the team that was working in that particular area, kind of repurpose them for something else. So if the technology fails in any kind of field, not just the warehouses, of course, you're going to be left a little bit exposed because what are we going to do now? Like, how are we going to be able to replace this? I mean, it's a very great example. I've heard so many horror cases where the WMS failed and then there was no WMS for a couple of days. And then, of course, you're missing so many moves and pretty much have to run in the dark, close everything for a week and try and kind of reestablish the data accuracy. So with any technology, you're always going to have this. Well, of course, like the number of AI tools used currently is not too high, so that the exposure is not that high. As things progress, of course, it's going to become more and more important. But as again, with any technology across history, the benefits of using it and the impact, like positive impact of business by having it day to day versus like the off chance that something might go wrong at one point, obviously they're all outweighing. Right now, like, yes, probably it could go back up and running and get itself back into some sort of cadence quite quickly. But obviously the technology evolves and they can embrace it and they see those benefits, there will have to kind of be more additional ways to have like a backup plan in case things go wrong.
Now, every tech company I speak to says AI is going to transform logistics. And yeah, of course it is. We always like to look forward rather than backwards in logistics business conversations. So the warehouse of the future is going to be more, would you say, more autonomous, or they're going to become simply just better informed?
What's next in logistics? We're asking the experts. In our Crystal Ball segment, industry leaders share their predictions for the future.
I mean, it's taking it in strides, right? And there's different technologies supporting with different things. So it's definitely going to become much better informed. It's going to become easier to make decisions. I think the way that data is going to be brought together and analyzed normally would have taken hours of going into different systems, downloading elements, trying to crunch Excel spreadsheets. Like, of course, it's happening at a lightning speed and in very like real time. So based on a move that we capture on the floor, we instantly can then predict and understand, okay, what are going to be the next 10 things happening potentially and what can you do about it right now? It's not necessarily just being better informed because a lot of that information kind of exists already, but it's not being pulled together and compared and contrasted as fast as possible because obviously the human mind does have its limitations to be able to make much more complex decisions, not just like make them faster. But then when it comes to the physical automation side of things, there's just more and more solutions, of course, coming to that market as well that can treat different types of goods in different ways, that can bring a lot more flexibility to the space also. I mean, if you think about an example, for instance, like we have quite a few customers like the guys at Saddle Creek, for instance, we just posted up a case study on them where you have multiple customers with different types of goods under the same roof. So it's quite hard to automate that because of any automation solution requires training and you has to understand what types of goods it will be dealing in. So if you have an autonomous forklift, like, is it Euro pallets, is it normal UK pallets, how big they are, how heavy they are, and one side of the warehouse might be palletized, another one might be just simple boxes. So again, that kind of automation doesn't go from one side to the other. So there's so many more solutions now that have that flexibility and way of adapting to the goods already kind of predetermined, which means that the decisions kind of to bring the automation in will be a lot easier to do, because you no longer have to think, okay, I'm committing this for the next 5 to 10 years, and it's when I have to deliver these particular numbers to make it productive and to make it efficient. So you'll be able to change your goods, change the customer inside, and still deliver to that capability.
So in warehousing terms, what are you excited about over the next few years?
Yeah, I think it's rather than technology, to be honest, I think it's the appetite that people have for it.
Mm-hmm.
We got pulled into this space after the pandemic, and a lot of people at the time that we're speaking to in like 2021, 2022 was like, man, we know we need to do something, and I think technology is the right solution, but any kind of tech adoption usually is scary because it might require a change of workflows, might require a change of process. And it's kind of this like predetermined thinking that it's a long journey and it's painful and it's not going to work initially, and we're going to have to like waste time to kind of get it off its feet. Whereas a lot of the solutions nowadays are pretty much plug in and then there we go. Even in our instance, it takes about 2 to 5 days to get up and running, and then you're pretty much done. And obviously, of course, there's another element of adopting the tech and then using it, which is a little bit different. But I think we're now in a position where people are no longer afraid to really say yes to technology, and technology is in a place where it makes it so seamless to start. That's kind of the one element that I'm most excited about, is just seeing more of the solutions adopted and how excited the industry is about it.
Yes, I guess you're taking very strong and large steps towards eliminating the annual stock take altogether.
Oh, yes.
That's going to be a thing of the past.
I mean,
isn't it?
it's not that we're taking steps, we have already eliminated that. So we have multiple sites where that's no longer kind of being done. I mean, we spend a lot of time, of course, kind of talking to the people on the floor that you have to go for the PA checks, but also with the finance teams are in head office and needed all kinds of records for auditors. So the auditors themselves, like we already kind of have the green light from all the big guys that our solution is fully kind of certified and accepted to replace that PI check. Because again, we're going we're going to close the site for a week, check every single thing, make a record of it and moving on, to like every single day you have a full view, sometimes even multiple times a day, of the entire site, together with any issues and discrepancies. So yeah, you're changing the workflow a lot.
Now, I'm going to ask you to forgive me, Oana, for many reasons, but this is because I'm about to introduce a new feature called Quickfire. You weren't prepared for this, and I don't think our
boy.
producer Will was either. I'm going to ask you to complete these sentences as fast as you can.
Oh, God.
And let's see how we get on with this, shall we? So you're the guinea pig. The biggest myth about warehouse AI,
That it can solve all problems for everyone.
the warehouse KPI people should pay more attention to, is
Accuracy of data.
one technology outside your own that really excites you is
Ooh, I'll talk a bit about our friends. I should have just said the word, I know, but
That's okay.
the picking solutions I think are very exciting. There's a lot of fantastic development happening there. So yeah.
Are you looking around for sort of the actual physical side of it as much as the software
Both
side?
actually, yeah, both.
Yeah.
So I mean, we work with a lot of different other partners. I think the ones that we normally kind of spend a lot of time on the floor with are the guys at Locus, for instance. It's very exciting to kind of see the two solutions working together, for instance, and obviously all the information we're providing, how that makes their fleet kind of more productive and efficient, and kind of picking and moving things around. But also, to your point, is when you're actually looking at the final take, all the improvements are happening in the robotic arms to understand how they're picking things, what they're doing with it, and so on.
It was a long answer, and I suppose it doesn't quite fulfill the brief of Quickfire.
Sorry.
But I did encourage you. Here's the last one. If every warehouse manager could fix one thing tomorrow morning, it would be...
Push your inventory accuracy to as close to 100%.
And that means 99.8 is achievable from your
Exactly.
experience.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Multiple times, and day after day after day. Yeah.
I view it sometimes a little bit like the 100-meter sprint, where there used to be incremental improvements of, tenths of a second, and then hundredths of a second, and now thousandths of a second. Guess 99.8 5 years from now would sound terribly inaccurate. We'll be looking at 99.99 or something like that.
I mean, why not 100, to be honest? But no, I think it's as long as you're still gonna have. I'm not even gonna like just focus on that. There's still so much complexity in how you're running sites that errors are still gonna like creep in. And the higher the velocity of the goods, I mean, more goods coming in and out every day, the higher the volume, even the higher the value, because people are kind of like more obsessed with the value itself. You're gonna have elements kind of not aligning and things going wrong. So I think, as with anything in life, 100%, you might achieve that on a few days or a few days, but kind of keeping that and really maintaining it continuously, I think that's kind of the hardest part. But dealing with like, 5, 10 things going wrong versus thousands every day, it's just a very, very different place to be in.
Well, Oana, we seem to have reached the end of our allotted time. When we get stuck in such an interesting and wide-ranging topic, I have to say time really does fly. So I want to end with just something maybe slightly philosophical. But if somebody's listening to today's conversation and you want them to remember one thing, what would you like that to be?
I mean, going back to what we started the conversation, there's a lot of exciting things happening in the tech world, specifically focusing on supply chain and logistics, like probably more than ever before, because the sector, I mean, wasn't necessarily top of mind. But now there's just so much going on. So what I would normally encourage people to do is actually, rather than jumping in and saying, well, I want to adopt a technology, just go back to the basics and figure out, okay, where do we have parts of our process or parts of our day-to-day that things are not going as we would want them to do? Figure out what that problem is and then find a solution to fit the problem. I'm seeing so many kind of customers out there, like partners that are just jumping in. It's like, I really want to have a particular type of, I don't know, picking robot, and then you realize their goods themselves just would never fit into that, and they're trying to kind of make the two come together, and the technology fails and it never gets adopted. So I always kind of encourage people to think about what are the problems that we need to solve, and there's definitely a solution out there for it, rather than kind of starting the other way around and trying to shove a solution into an imaginary problem, and then you realize actually it's not big enough to justify the investment.
Well, thank you very much indeed for joining us today, Oana, and also to you, the listener, for tuning into this episode of Logistics Business Conversation. We're building out quite a library of content which you can access via our website at logisticsbusiness.com, or indeed you can just search for Logistics Business Conversations on your podcast platform of choice. So once again, thank you for joining us today, Oana.
Thank you so much for having me.
And until the next episode of Logistics Business Conversations, it's goodbye and thank you from me, Peter MacLeod.